Hello, everyone. My name is Paula Raihna. I'm a lighting designer based in Portugal. I co-founded Filamento along with my colleague, Joana Mendo, and my presentation is called Light Where the Sun Sets Last, because we are actually in the western tip of Europe. I live in Lisbon, and as Lisbon is a city that is quite known amongst the film industry because of the natural daylight. There are a lot of commercials and films that are done here, just because we have the right settings for filming. And I guess we all have this perception that daylight comes from everywhere. It's quite an interesting city because of that. And I've also been thinking of why do we have this special light, or why everyone talks about the light of Lisbon or a light of Portugal in general. I guess there are various reasons for that, but mostly because of the river Tagus. So our city sits by the river, which is actually quite a wide river. So it's almost like a sea, let's say, that reflects and bounces light back into the city. Also, the topography of the city, it's hilly, so the city kind of goes down to the river and is facing the south mostly, at least the hill to the river. Also, the cobblestone pavement, which we are also quite famous for, in quite light colors. So even though we have this contrast with the black, it's mostly, or the perception we have, it's mostly light colored pavement, which also helps the reflection of the light in the city. We are also in one of the countries that we have more sun in Europe. So which means that great parts of our days are actually sunny. We have quite strong and cast shadows, and that actually have an impact in our architecture and landscape. And our architects actually take advantage of that. So I think these are some of the reasons why our lighting is special. However, what happens is that I think because daylight is taken and sunlight is taken for granted, it means that it seems that is the only valid source. And actually, I think in regards to country-wise, we have a very low sensible culture to lighting in terms of electrical lighting. So actually, one of our biggest challenges as a light designer is to educate people or to raise awareness in the importance of lighting in the built environment. I'll give you an example. It's a fairly simple example here in Lisbon. So this is a public lift. It actually looks like a tram, but that takes people from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill. And in the past few years has turned into a major tourist attraction. Lots of tourists taking pictures here, but as you can see, it's quite a narrow street, but there's plenty of daylight, and you have this impression that is quite a bright city with the sun at the back. So when the sun sets, this is the space that we had 10 years ago. So it was quite amber. We still had this amber colored of the public lighting, but gave this moody and the mysterious feeling. There were bars along these streets in the ground floors where people gathered, and it was quite popular at night. Recently, this is the actual picture. The public lighting, I can guess for various reasons, even complaints from the neighbors because of the noise, or the side streets that looked too dark. And I guess with a lot of people going around at night, people felt insecure. Maybe tourism to attract more people, to make it more inviting to tourists. Well, nevertheless, the public council, they changed the lighting, and they decided to retrofit this heritage lighting with quite bright and white LED lamps, which created these two bright spaces in these glary ambiances. So I guess what I'm trying to say with this example is that We are in a culture where either the spaces, and it's not for just for the exterior or for the public lighting, but also for the interiors, where the spaces are either too bright and glary or too dark and moody, which, I mean, obviously can be adequate for some specific spaces, but that's usually the general environment that you find in most of the country. So as you can imagine, once again, my role or our challenges as lighting designers here in Portugal is actually educating and raising awareness on the importance of lighting and what is the impact of bringing lighting designer to the projects. I guess we're not the only ones. I'm sure that in most of the countries, we also have this issue. But you know, because we have this daylight culture, it's actually quite frustrating that in terms of the electric lighting, it doesn't seem to a message that gets through. It's changing, which is good news for us. Nevertheless, this is the first project I'm going to present. It's a bridge, as you can see, in the south of Portugal, in Tavira. And this bridge is next to a Roman bridge. And basically the architects wanted to create an element that was as minimal as possible, not to interfere with the heritage and the conflict with the other bridge. So our role here was also to integrate as even as possible. So we developed a detail with the architects to create this minimal lighting during the day. You don't see any products. I mean, as you can imagine, we had very high standards in terms of electrical and mechanical issues, and not to mention the intensity levels we had to reach in this area as well, which were requirements from the council. But you know, we managed to accomplish and to solve all the requirements, and this was the result. I think everyone was quite happy at the end, and it has been quite an outstanding walkway now over the bridge and between the two river banks. So I think the lesson learned here was that, you know, it was important. We also did a mock-up of the bridge. We were very much part of the process, so we could actually change and adapt the details so the lighting was as integrated as possible, was not glary. And I think that was also very important for the architects to have this assistant for this result. The next project I'm presenting is a hotel. Well, in the past few years, we had a lot of hospitality projects. Most of them, or some of them, stopped before the pandemic, or during the pandemic. You know, the construction was delayed, some were cancelled or suspended, but fortunately we could see some being concluded, and this was one of them. It's a hotel in Lisbon. It's an example of a contemporary building. So we designed, we came into the project from the beginning, and that we were able to integrate lighting within the architectural and the interior design scope. We went from facade lighting to the guest rooms. I think here the challenge was the interior design wanted actually the fixtures to be very visible and to be part of the scheme. So what happens, we had this line theme or these linear profiles that we had to make them decorative, or to give them a proper function in terms of orientation, of character of the space. Sometimes the lighting is just as a direction, or it's actually, we are actually using the lighting to graze the walls or to give wall washers. So yeah, we had to give an additional dimension to the fixtures, and not so much the complete integration where the lighting is not visible. On the other side of the spectrum, we had this project in Porto, which is a building with over 500 years. So as you can imagine, the challenges here were a bit different. I mean, I think our role here was to enhance the architecture and the history of the space. We had these quite strong and characteristic walls. We had elements from historic elements, you know, these arches. We had also elements that were integrated into the 70s. For example, there was a refurbishment in this hotel. And this building had passed already through different functions. The previous function was being a bank. It had been other types of buildings. So in each time they changed the function, they added elements. So the architect in here tried to select the parts that you wanted to pick and to keep it. And this was one of those elements. Here the challenge was mainly technical because we didn't have, as you can imagine, in an existing building, there's always points. We can't have all the light points we want. It's hard to integrate lighting. So we had to come up with a minimal solution as possible to enhance and to bring all these features to light. This is actually the basement. So this is a multifunction space that exists in the hotel, and it's where the spiral staircase ends. You know, so we have this very big contrast between the white spiral staircase and completely black space. So actually, the black was a color that the architect brought in to create this harsher contrast and to make it more dramatic. And I think lighting also helps to reveal, and we try to reveal all these more historic features. This is, for example, a staircase that is the remains from the 15th century, but that at the moment leads to nowhere. But we made it, instead of making it, it was hidden before the construction. So we actually, with lighting, we also tried to reveal it and to make a special feature of the space. We were talking about refurbishments. This is one of our largest projects at the moment. It hasn't been open to the public. This is a convent that is used as a congress space and event space. And I think here the challenge was mostly how to tackle this historic approach. How do we create different settings for this space? This cloister also was, they had a roof, but it was completely changed for this matrix of skylights, where actually our lighting, we integrated lighting almost to feel like, you know, at nighttime or dark hours you can have daylight. So the challenge was actually to create all these different layers of light, so you could have all these different settings and different functions in the space. So these are some more images, but we are actually looking forward for this to be open to the public and to show all the lighting scheme of this project. Now I'm moving for two last projects that actually we consider them in our special feature projects. This is an exhibition. It's in the moment in the our Natural History Museum and Science Museum. And here the challenge was technical, was also the balance between different atmospheres. So the exhibition is called Natural Variations, and the designers actually inspired them in our natural landscape of the country. So the idea is that you go through all the different landscapes that you could find in the country that are characteristics, at least of Portugal. Either the mountains, the ocean, the oak forests, or the fields. So the visitor is invited to walk through those landscapes. I mean, as you can see, it's a black box where we had to create all these atmospheres because it's in the Natural History Science Museum. the idea of using these landscapes was to show the animals and plants that existed in those specific ecosystems, which we had to highlight as displays. We had obviously issues and concerns about the amount of lighting that we were able to deliver to the animals. So it was also technical on that side. Lighting sometimes is dynamic. For example, here, these lines are dynamic to recreate the movement of the tide. So when the tide goes up and goes down, here, for example, lighting is highlighting the flight of these birds, this flock of birds. So it's also dynamic in order for us to have this feeling that they are landing or they are starting flying and landing in the river. Some of the displays we had to light. And yeah, so this is our project. Our last project is a temporary installation. This was in 2020. So it was the first year of the pandemic. The museums were completely closed. This actually is in the gardens of the Serralves Museum in Oporto, which is quite a well-known institution for contemporary art. And they invited us to create a lighting scheme so people could come at night and visit the gardens. And that was actually the only event that they were able to do that summer, because all the interior exhibitions were closed. This is, at the moment, it was a project almost with a very, very little budget, very challenging in terms of, you know, whatever was happening with the pandemic. We were on site several nights. We were also helping installing and to focusing. So it was a very hands-on project, so quite interesting for that. But also in terms of equipment, we had very basic equipment. They just gave us floodlights, you know, like almost two wattages of floodlights. And we had to come up with, as lighting designers, we had to use all our creativity, all our technical knowledge. We invented snoots, we did masks, we did colors, color filters. We used LED tubes and mirror balls to create reflections and high contrasts. We did DIY to create all these technical tools and all these light tools to help us to modulate and control the lighting. And also, I mean, our aim was to enhance all the beautiful natural landscape of the space, as long as these existing architectural structures. The reason I brought this project is that I think it reflects a little bit our challenges as a lighting designer in Portugal. So most of us, we have, in our projects, we have quite limitations budget-wise, technical, and I think we always have to adapt and to use our creativity to overcome all those challenges, especially in a culture where lighting is not, or electrical lighting is not that considered. So anyway, I think we still believe in improving the spaces with lighting. That's what we are passionate about, and that's, I think, what also moves us forward in this profession. Thank you, everyone.